Well, hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jane and I'm a textile artist and living in the heart of Scotland. But today I'm wanting to talk about the question that I get asked most often, and that is, why do I go to Italy for a month at this time of year? Or maybe, how do I manage to go to Italy for a month at this time of year? So I wanted to talk about that because it's not actually about going to Italy. It's about recognizing where there was something wrong in my life and then experimenting to see what would help put it right. So it's a much bigger thing than me heading off to Italy on my own. So to explain this, I have to go back to 2022. Now, in 2022, I was feeling quite disconnected and discontented with my business. I was frustrated and I felt kind of trapped. Now, looking back, this was all things that I had done to myself. It wasn't the business's fault. It wasn't anybody else's fault. It is that I had set things up in a way that made me feel that I wasn't free to do what I want. And of course, you set up a business yourself largely to give yourself more freedom. And I had failed at that. So what I did was I decided that at the winter solstice, so third week in December, I would set myself the intention to just work out what was happening with this. Why was I feeling like this? And that over the next year, because I have an autoimmune disease, I appreciate that lots of things take time. And I think that there is this thing that we all overestimate what we can do in a day, and we underestimate the changes that can take place in a year. And I'm a great believer in that. So I committed to spending a year trying to work out what had gone wrong and how to fix it in my business. And I decided that what I would do is I would treat it as a series of experiments. And every month I would look at it through a different lens, using, symbolism of the moon and astrology and things, but really using those as a helpful structure rather than anything else. So I began to look at what I had done with my business. And I realized pretty quickly that it was I had taken on ideas about business that were not true. So specifically, I had taken on the idea that you have to work really, really hard, that somehow that working hard, that overstretching, that being exhausted and constantly busy was an essential part of business. I had taken on this idea that there's scarcity, that you're in competition with a whole load of other small businesses, and you have to therefore be faster, brighter, cheaper, more in everybody's face, whatever, than other businesses, or you will not win. And I think this was this thing that there is this idea of winning at business. And a lot of these things had become really embedded. And one reason that they had done that is that when I started the retail side of my business. So first of all, I was a cut flower grower, and then I moved. When I became ill, I couldn't grow cut flowers anymore. Gave up that dream, and I moved on to sort of craft side of things with freehand machine embroidery, lots of textile art, and I was doing that through my website and through some galleries and things. So at that point, I was picked up by Not on the High Street, which is a marketplace website in the UK. And so they have sort of like this overarching brand, which is Not on the High Street. And then inside that, there are, at that point there was hundreds, now there will be thousands of sellers, each responsible for their own making and packaging and sending out, but not responsible for their own marketing or website maintenance or any of those things. So it was a really good site, a fantastic proposition. But what it did do is it meant that you were in competition with other sellers. Now, on the face of it, it was a really community focused business. We all had get-togethers, there was events, there was forums, it was like that. But when you come down to it being one website and there are 8 slots for products on the first front page, that is quite scarce. Because if you're in one of those slots on the front page, or in the bit that says, recommended teacher's gifts, and it's got 12 options, if you're one of those, then customers don't go searching the rest of the site. They just pick one of these 12, and your business does really, really well. So there was genuine scarcity within the site. And to maximize their sales, because they're getting a percentage of all sales, Not on the High Street, who quite rightly saw themselves in competition with sort of Amazon or the big department stores, Etsy maybe, but these big sellers, particularly Amazon, they saw themselves as in competition with them. So they needed to have the same things. It is again this scarcity thing. So if Amazon is offering next day delivery, Not on the High Street felt it had to offer next day delivery. If it was free postage on Amazon, had to be free postage on Not on the High Street. Now, they never said that you had to give free postage or next day delivery, but to be in one of these slots that were going to get the sales, can completely understand it, they needed that. So this had all become entrenched in my head that I was in competition. I had to give so much. I was still running next day delivery, which was nonsensical. And on top of that, I have a tendency to be a people pleaser. So if somebody emailed me at 9 o'clock at night and they'd lost their password and they couldn't get the pop-up to work for the replacement password, I would be sitting down and replying to them at that time of night. And of course, all that does is it sets up a feeling of never being finished, never replenished, bit resentful and trapped. So the first thing that I did right the way through 2023 is look one thing a month, each of these things. So I stopped the next day delivery. I stopped even, there's a dog barking. I stopped the next day delivery. I stopped dispatching every day. It's not as though the kinds of things that we need, that I sell, are needed. And yes, there was a period of people getting used to that because I had trained them. I had trained all of my customers to think that if they ordered at 3 o'clock on a Thursday, they could get it on a Friday, and they would then get later and later in their heads because the deadline moves. Training people to become less organized because they know that they could just order it on the day before and pay for next day delivery. So I got rid of that. I explained to everybody that my post office is 10 minutes drive away, and that it is not sensible for me to be driving over there with 1 or 2 parcels, and that I would be, dispatching twice a week, and it would be on the days where that was convenient. I was going somewhere else, and it's much more eco-friendly, and so on. Nobody objected, because why would they? And then I put parameters around my emails, that I wouldn't look at or respond to email after 5 o'clock, and I wouldn't do it at weekends, and so on. So all of these things just began to build me a business which was less constraining. And then I realized that it wasn't just in business that I had built up artificial walls. It was also with the way I live my life. Now, I have an autoimmune disease, and I have had that for 20 years. And because of that, because it's been for so long, and because all my family and friends are amazing people, they work very seamlessly to make my life easier, and so they do a whole load of stuff, and I get to rest or stop. They're really eagle-eyed on when my brain starts to go foggy, or I'm struggling with things, and suddenly, there are seats, or there are cups of coffee, or whatever. And because they are amazing, and because they're so elegant and gracious in the way they do it, I had become convinced that I wouldn't be able to do any of these things on my own. And I was quite embarrassed with realizing how much I had decided that deep in my subconscious, as though I was sort of like some Hollywood star, or a princess needing an entourage to go with her. So top of my list, because of this, was this idea that I couldn't travel independently, because realistically, if Ewan or my daughters are with me, they carry heavy stuff. They get all of the, bring cups of coffee in the airport. They've sorted everything out, And when we get somewhere, I would just have a rest, and people will go out and buy groceries and things. It's been wonderful, but in my head, I had it that I wouldn't be able to do it without that. So I decided that the only way to address that would be to kind of rip the plaster and say, right, I'm going away for 4 weeks on my own, and I'm going to go abroad, because, I always wanted to do it sort of February to March, just before the growing season for the dye garden. And so I'm going to go there. I want to go somewhere where it's a bit warmer than here. And I settled on Naples, which is a city that I had visited for 2 days the previous year. Absolutely loved. So I contacted the landlord that we'd stayed in the apartment. Oh, this, really nice area. It's nice and safe. There's concierge downstairs. And to see whether I could take the apartment for a whole month, and how much that would be, because obviously you can't pay full Airbnb rates for a whole month. And we sort of took it off book, and it was, off season for them, and, they don't have to have cleaners and all of this kind of thing. So it turned out to be affordable. And because I have this 4 weeks, and because it's not a holiday, and basically it's not a holiday that I go on, I move my work, apart from the shop, obviously, to Italy. And it is a great breadth of time. So I'm not spending my time trying to fit in things and, buzz about a city. I am just moving my life from here to Naples. And that gives me lots and lots of recovery time, because I do find travel tiring, but I know that I will arrive there. There will be food left by my hosts for first night, and it doesn't matter if I spend the next day in bed. I don't have all the guilt things of if you've gone on a family holiday and you're stuck in bed because you're tired and everybody else wants to go out but they don't want to leave you, and all of that kind of thing just disappears. So I go there, I take taxis when I need to, I do everything myself, but it is not maybe to the standard or busyness if I went with other people. So that's how I did it. I just decided that I wanted to do it and I booked it up. However, what I wanted to say was that although that I saw that as really just a way of recalibrating myself within having an autoimmune disease, what it actually did was it showed me that having that space and time really helped my ideas for business too. Now, I'm always very wary of saying, oh, resting, it made me more productive, because that's not what rest's for. And also it's not really that accurate as to what happened. What happens is that giving myself quiet and time for introspection, and basically in Naples, I run the studio club. So there is things with that, and writing and blogs and so on. But it gives me time to walk, to explore a city, to sit with a cup of coffee, a few cups of coffee for an hour, to just people watch, and then in the evenings to just have this space to do whatever I wanted, whether that's meditation, whether it's reading, whether it's knitting, watching a movie on my laptop, whatever. There's very little that is demanding. And because I do not speak Italian very well, I do not speak Italian at all, apart from being able to order fruit and vegetables and say hello to people. The whole thing turns into a little bit of a silent retreat for me, which I find very, very valuable. And the thing that it changes is after a few days, I begin to be much more aware of my gut reactions to things. And I become much more receptive to unusual, innovative, out the blue kinds of ideas. So, for example, I had been there in Naples for a couple of weeks, and I was sitting with an espresso in this square, and I was thinking, how had I actually been so lucky to just almost fall on to the thing that was doing me so much good. And I realized, as a kind of almost like a complete thing, that it was this system with the months and the experiments and the looking at it through a different lens. And I realized that if I could see what I was doing as a system, then I could teach it to other people. And that's where I came up with the idea of Bloom. And I messaged my friend Viv. I sent her a great big long WhatsApp about what I wanted to do and how it was going to be structured, and how many people I could have and that kind of thing. And I said, and I want to call it Bloom. And then I walked back different way, a way that I had never been before. And about halfway along the street, here was this little blackboard thing, and it said, Bloom, happy hour cocktails. I thought, well, there we go. That is, that is something I'm noticing, because I am so all in on this idea. And then, I came back, launched that in May last year, and just about to open up places for the fourth one. And that has been a delight. I have loved working with people on that and seeing the transformation. And often, again, it starts off with really, really small things. It starts off with creating boundaries, or trying things out as an experiment, bringing things into your life, getting rid of other things. And then suddenly there is a big thing, like the going to Italy, like changing jobs, like, bringing something completely new into your life. And it's very satisfying, to watch. So I am recording this a few days before I head off to Italy. As you are watching this, I think I will be heading for, this is assuming you're watching on the day it's posted. If you're watching it on the day it's posted, I will be heading for Venice railway station to get the train down to Naples. And I will post from Naples next week. So I hope that kind of gives an idea of all of the things that went into this deciding to go to Italy. Because, it's often like one of these things where people are sort of like overnight successes or whatever. And these decisions seem to come from nowhere. And certainly, I've met friends and they've gone, goodness, I heard you just went off to Italy. It was part of a process, but it was a really interesting process, taking responsibility for a lot of the very false ideas I had been running with, and then taking the leaps. So I shall see you next week, and until then, bye-bye.